Let's do another video response to some people in the skeptic community who, for obvious reasons, have no fucking clue what they're talking about when it comes to fascism and National Socialism. So let's dissect more of what two people in particular, a roaming millennials and a V. These are the two people. And roaming millennials spoke about fascism, and we'll touch on her real fast. Unfortunately, this video response will not be alcohol induced, although that is much needed for me to watch these videos and to reply to them, because in a sober state it's just so frustrating to watch these things and get angry. So unfortunately I'm gonna have to put myself through that in this case. So this is coffee induced. So let's start with roaming millennials.
In his 1988 essay, The Five Stages of Fascism, Professor Robert Paxton of Columbia University, a noted scholar on fascism, broke down what he saw as 7 feelings that act as, quote, mobilizing passions for fascist regimes, which are, number 1, the primacy of the group, i.e. fascists tend not to be individualists. Number 2, believing that one's group is a victim. Number 3, the belief that individualism and liberalism enable dangerous decadence and have a negative effect on the group. Number 4, a strong sense of community or brotherhood. Number 5, individual self-esteem is tied up in the grandeur of the group. If you ask me, this is something that's especially apparent in modern-day instances of growing fascist sentiment, but we'll get to that later. Number 6, extreme support of a natural leader who is always male. Now, though this point about the male leader was definitely true for 20th century fascism, I do kind of question how relevant it is to current iterations of the ideology, but anyway. This brings us to number 7, the beauty of violence and of will when they are devoted to the group's success in a Darwinian struggle. The idea of a naturally superior group, or especially in Hitler's case, biological racism, fits into a fascist interpretation of Darwinism. So now that we're all experts on what fascism is, joke, calm down, I know we're not.
So why even make a video about it, right? If you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, why even make a video about it? So her intent in the video is to define fascism, because the claim that it's too abstract, that too many people call each other fascist, and the right and the left accuse each other of being fascist. So she's saying, hey, we need to end this abstractness and get a definite conclusion as to what a fascist is. So she takes these general principles that are very, very, very general, that can, if you use this method that she's using and the professor used, I mean, you can make numerous things that aren't fascist fit into fascism. And the irony of the whole video is her intent was to take away the abstractness of fascism, to give it some definite definition to it. But instead, she used something that was so generalized and abstract and applied it to fascism that in the end, in the video, she comes to how both Antifa and the alt-right are fascists, when no, they're not, either side. Everyone's always, these days, virtue signaling against each other. They're fascist. No, they're fascist. No, I'm fascist. A fascist won't hide from the title fascist, because a fascist fanatically believes in the greatness of fascism. So no fascist will shirk away from the accusation, you're a fascist. Yeah, you're damn fucking right. And let me tell you why you should be too. That's the approach of the fascist. So this virtue signaling against each other, first, it's ridiculous. Second, to use, I mean, what she did with this list is, it's like me saying, well, a dog has 4 legs, 1 tail, has teeth, has 2 ears, can run and jump, and can be domesticated. So, therefore, a cat is a dog as well. Yeah, you see, that's exactly what she did with this lame-ass list, which is all these large generalizations. You can look at the list and say, oh, do these hold true with fascists? These general, very generalized principles? Yeah, of course. And they would hold true with numerous other people as well. Hence why she was able to say Antifa and the alt-right are both fascist, when they're not. Only a fascist is a fascist. It's not going to be leftist and rightist. It's a third position. If, you know, I don't get, and just like the next part of this video when I'm replying to this guy V, you see, and even with roaming millennials, you see there's a bookcase in the background, right? Like there is in mine. It's like, it's great things. You have to wonder if sometimes are these just like prop decorations, or do they really use these things? And if they use these things, why are they making videos off internet articles? In both cases, let's look at the skeptic community that my dear subscriber have kind of pestered me into digging into. We had Sargon, who used his definition of National Socialism, came from a paragraph in a book by a capitalist Jew. And that's what he said, you know, this is how he defined the whole context and the core of National Socialism came from that paragraph from this capitalist Jew. It's like, why wouldn't you go read the literature yourself? And then at least you'd have an understanding. And then what the next one was Vox Day. Who knows where the fuck he got his information from? But he was talking about, you know, National Socialism, i.e. fascism, is leftist and not rightist, which is ridiculous. It's not. It's called a third position for a reason. It is neither right nor left. You'll find aspects of the left and aspects of the right, both intertwined in fascism. I mean, that's the whole belief, is taking what works and using it and discarding what doesn't work, and then applying whatever's brand new to the political ideology as well. So it's ridiculous. And then now with this, all right, we got the internet article. She used a Wikipedia definition of fascism, and then this Paxton's super generalized, super abstract definitions of fascism, and then she used those abstract definitions to unabstract the definition of fascism. The fuck? Fucking right here. This is it. It's not a big book. All you guys can do it. I see your libraries in the background. Origins and Doctrine of Fascism. Giovanni Gentile. Or Gentile. Pick it up. Learn a little something. And to even for people who wanted to read more and know more, link in the description of a conversation with me and my fascist brother, Marshall Ironside, speaking about books for fascists to read so they can understand not only the philosophy of fascism, but the politics of fascism. So going to these abstract lists, it's ridiculous. Of course, you're going to make it more abstract now. Of course, now in your head, Antifa can be called fascist and the alt-right can be called fascist. No, they can't. The core is completely missing in both. So you can dumb it down and say, since they both have 4 legs, since they both have teeth, they both have 2 ears, cats and dogs are the same thing. That's not reality. That's not intellectually accurate. That's more abstractness. So no, you fail on your list of fascism. You fail on describing who's a fascist. Fascist doesn't shirk away from the title. Simply just learn about it. At least you'll know what you're arguing against. And you'll remove that ignorance. Because searching these internet articles and then trying to base full opinions off of them, that's what these people are doing. And in all these instances I'm replying to, that's exactly what they're doing. And once again, this is why this whole skeptic community is bullshit. One truth in the world. Might makes right. That's it. Lesson of history, lesson of the present day, way of the future. It is what it is. So all this other shit, all this, this logical fallacy says this logical fallacy is right and this one's wrong, and blah, 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 going back and forth. We can win through arguments. We can win through rational conversation. And you're just wasting your time. It's all intellectual masturbation. I'm talking to you, their subscribers that would come across to this. This is ridiculous. And then you're watching videos on people reading internet articles and then explaining whole political doctrines to you through simple internet articles. No, it's ridiculous. It's a sham. This is why I need a drunken video response, because I feel the blood pressure already pumping up. So let's get on to, that's ridiculous. Roaming millennials, pick up a fucking book. Read the ideology, learn the ideology, and you won't fall for the same trap everyone else does by turning fascism into this great abstract thing where the left can call the right fascist and the right can call the left fascist. It's all inaccurate, and it's just used as a slander, essentially. And you do no service to any intellectual honesty reading some vague list and attaching this vague list to these two completely separate groups who are not only separate from each other, so obviously they can't both be fascist. All right, let's get on with the next guy, V, and his breakdown of National Socialism. Now, is this like the third video response thing I've done on National Socialism? Like, I'm all of a sudden becoming this defender of National Socialism when, you know, I guess it's fun to talk about history in there, but I really don't want to spend too much of my time arguing history with people. It's more important to argue the future, I would imagine, these days. So, but this will be my last video response to this whole community. I think you can look through the couple video responses I've done and look at their original content and make your own decisions from there. And so this will be the last. It's getting repetitive. It's the same thing. Like I said, they're looking off internet articles and they're fucking making videos on this. And, you know, some of you people are paying to see people read internet articles to you and give you half-assed conclusions. I mean, I don't get it, but it's working for them, I guess, right? I don't, what do they say? Don't hate the player, hate the game. So let's get into V's video. It's an hour long, so what I'm going to do is chop up his main themes, the main points he's getting across, and we'll address those. And he is reading from a BBC News article. I'll link the article as well in the descriptions. And it's once again, it's unfortunate. You see in the background, he has this impressive collection of books behind him, and yet he's making a video on an internet article he's reading. It's like, why not make videos? I don't know, maybe he does make videos on the books, like he's taking what he learns from the books and transfers them to video for his subscribers. Maybe he does that, but then why make a video off an internet article? And then you know, he's kind of fucking snarky douchebag. He comes across, being my only video I've seen on him, just how like he reads this simplified ass, half-ass, accurate BBC News article from a company, part of the country that was at war with the country they're talking about. And oh my God, you know, what a shock. They have this, you know, negative slanted article against them. Oh, you know, sure, completely intellectually honest and accurate, right? But this guy's being all snarky about it, and we'll see as we go through it. It's just some funny, just the attitude. Anyways, to have that kind of demeanor off I guess ignorance truly is bliss, because off this half-ass knowledge, this guy is being just like so condescending and snarky. It's funny, the ignorance of people, and yet he has all these books behind him. It shows you. It shows you. You know, it doesn't matter if you don't put in the time on yourself, because I think this is at the core of this whole skeptic community. There's a lot of frail egos and know-it-all attitudes, and I need to win, because a lot of their monetary survival depends on people believing that they win arguments. They're smart. They know it. They can't be beat. They're right. And like, there's a lot of ego in this scene, and it's fucking ugly. They have these fragile egos and soft bodies to go along with it. And they think all the muscles up here, but it's not when you're reading internet articles. All these, like I said, all these responses to all these videos of all these skeptics, it's always the same shit. It's like, why, like if they're really skeptics, why wouldn't they be versed on both? I mean, that's the true scientific approach to something, isn't it? But they're not. So let's get into it. Let's get into some of the main themes of this video and let's pick it apart.
But anyway, right? There are other people who glorify Nazi Germany. And I just don't understand, why would you do that? Like, it is an oppressive country with a very oppressive economic system and oppressive to the citizens themselves. And I'm not talking about the Jews and the minorities. I'm talking like actual white Germans living in Nazi Germany. So I'm going to read for you a few things, and you are going to tell me if you'd want to live in such a place. If you'd actually want to be a member of this country. If you're in the United States right now, with the horrors of multiculturalism, would you want to change that and live in Germany? Assuming there would be no World War II, and you just live in a country that has all of these in place, would you want to actually be there? And we're going to talk about certain things. The reason I found this paper, which is on BBC, is because a person said that, Novi, you're full of shit. People who were unemployed in Germany didn't actually get persecuted or anything like that. You just made that up. And it's like, okay, where did I know this from? And I knew it from history when I was studying it in school, because we learned about Germany and the USSR. And I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's that I'm remembering wrong. But I went on Google and I found this article, and it turns out that I'm right. And I also found out other interesting things, which I want to talk about. So the problem with the neo-Nazis and everyone glorifying Germany is that they actually believe the German propaganda that was posted during that time period. Now, as you know, Germany went through World War I, and they lost. And because that they lost, they were forced to pay war reparations that were much higher than should have been asked from them. And, of course, the Nazis took advantage of this situation, and they promised that they will get jobs, they will promise that they will get the economy up and running, and they also promised that they will bring back Germany to the glory it was before World War I. So let's see how many of those things they managed to try. Now, take into account, this is one of the manipulation that a lot of the neo-Nazis use, which is not necessarily wrong, but we'll see why it's wrong. So before the Nazis, 6 million Germans were unemployed. Now, within these 6 million Germans, we count the fact that women are counted, and the military was so small that is negligible, right? So all of these 6 million people that are employed are also women. And then, after Germany came in, the first thing that they did is they installed the National Labor Service, which is something very similar to what Romania had by having the Patriotic Work Program. So during the National Labor Service, every man between the ages of 18 and 25 had to get 6 months of training at the RAD. He had to wear a military uniform, he had to live in military camps. He would not receive any wage for this time. He would only receive some pocket money so he can buy some food for himself and maybe some clothes. And he had to do military and physical exercises every day. Now, the work in RAD included planting forests and digging ditches on farms in the beginning. And then it moved on in 1933 to building hospital and having also the Autobahn built.
Okay, so I lied. I'm not going to chop up certain parts. We're just going to go through the video, because if I do it like that, I'll be here all day. And matter of fact, I'm not even going to go back and cut out where I said I was going to do it that way, because it'd still take too long. I want to get this out the way and get on my way. So first, listen to what he's describing here. And this shows part of the disconnect with a lot of the individualistic mentality. And I do believe more individualistic people will come over to a fascistic, collectivist, nationalist, populist kind of belief. And I've already seen it. I've met numerous YouTube users who had said, hey, I was a libertarian, but now I'm not. And so that'll keep happening. But here's a huge disconnect. And this isn't really even a critique of anything that's inaccurate with this statement. But what he's talking about with these forced jobs where they're essentially slaves, getting military training as kids, planting trees, beautification of the land around them, and then creating something like the Autobahn, which was a road that connected all of Germany. These, like, when I hear these things, that's fucking awesome. I mean, to take a youth and give them military training first off, so you have physical fitness, you have the ability to defend yourself, and then to put them in manual labor positions that not only give them a respect for manual labor, because in this society and in most capitalistic societies, you know, the bourgeois class, they look down on manual labor, all truth be told, and the attitude is there. There is a looking down at the nose of manual labor. That is because people haven't gone through those ranks. So the appreciation of that, it instills in the youth, A, and then B, for their land around them, for the beautification of their land around them. I mean, so this is highly intelligent and a highly productive way to put a youth through this program, 6 months to 2 years, that people like V here and many in his community would see as, oh, how horrible is this? Oh my God, it's so evil. We should be fucking gaming and eating Cheetos and drinking Mountain Dew right now. I mean, that's what an 18-year-old should be doing. So there's this disconnect that's always going to be there with certain people. Like I said, I don't preach giving up on people. You should always try to convert. But there comes, and this is why it always comes down to, in the end, might makes right. This is the laws of history, laws of the present day, and the way of the future. Is might makes right. Not might is right. Might makes right. There's a big difference in the two sayings. And because you're always going to meet people that simply will not agree with an ideology. There's always conflict. It always comes down to force of ideologies. And the conflict happens and plays out in many different ways. Some more violent than others. But there's always conflict. And it is because of this. There's this disconnect. They will always view something like what's being explained there as evil. And people like myself and others will always view those things as beautiful and necessary and intelligent. So, and there's always going to be that there. So that's what's being made clear here, is he describes something, oh my God, look how bad this is. Well, I'm like, wow, that's great. Really, you're going to give them, and they're going to be able to eat, right? As he says, you're fed, you get training, you get appreciation of not only the sense of brotherhood, because you're there with everyone else is going through the same thing. You build brotherhood in that sense too, is another thing these people are missing. When you have shared experiences, and even hard ones, toiling and especially through hard shared experiences is how you create brotherhood. But to put the youth through these military programs, training, and then to put them out in the fields, planting, tilling the soil, and then to put them together, creating the pathway of the future of their country. And as they're going through the physical and the mental struggle of this builds a strong bond as well. And they're doing it at such a young age. So when he describes something like that in such a negative term, I see something beautiful. And once again, there's always going to be that disconnect with certain people. And that's why it always comes down to what it comes down to, is always going to be force against each other.
So the reason the Germans managed to build the Autobahn is basically slave labor, right? You had, as a person, to stop watching your anime, to stop being at home, and for 6 months, go away from your family and work on farms, building ditches, constructing hospitals, hard labor, basically. Now, of course, some of you will say, well, there's nothing bad with that. That's really nice civic nationalism going on. You're not getting paid. You're missing school. Like, if you're getting an education, you have to stop. You have to do this shit. Oh, you can't pick up the building materials required for the hospital. They will mock you. They will insult you. They will, humiliate you. You have to do this, and you have to do it for your country. Oh, you don't want to do it. Oh, you're against the country. All right. So this is just one of the things.
And do you see how weak the argument against it is? You'll miss school. Oh, hold on. You're in a society now that has nationalized education. You're guaranteed school. It's exactly the opposite. Oh, they've ruined your life because for 6 months to 2 years you had to swing and hammer or do some military training or get in touch with the soil that you were birthed upon. Oh, how horrible that is. Your whole life is ruined now. You've had 2 years of this. Oh. So do you see how weak the argument against it is? There is no good argument against it as far as I'm concerned. There is not. When we look at the state of the individualistic society, why do you think anything of this corruption that many of us may have in common, of this belief of this corruption that exists today, that many of us have in common, how do you think it took root? It's because we were a divided country, because we weren't a unified people. The brotherhood that's built there at a young age creates a strong community as they grow into adults. And it is much harder to take advantage of a strong, unified community than a divided, fractured one that lives mainly to support a vice industry in a repetitive circle. So the argument is weak. I mean, they're going to tease you if you can't lift this. It sounds like some, projecting going on there.
That happened. Now, at the end of this, according to statistics, and Germans will say that we created jobs, right? So basically, it would take how many people were employed? Okay, so there were fewer than 355,000 people unemployed, right? So 355. Something is wrong with my lips. 350,000 people. See, I could do it. Right, so these are the statistics that the Nazi sympathizer will show. It's like, look how awesome the German party was. Look how awesome the National Working Socialist Party. Look, 350,000 people unemployed out of the initial 6 million people. They created jobs for everyone. Now, what is the problem with this, right? What is the issue that they refuse to talk about? First of all, women were now not counted as people who are unemployed. They were completely removed from the statistic because women didn't have to get a job. It's not a problem if women aren't unemployed. And we're going to talk about why that is in a bit.
Women were a part of the job market. We'll get into the stats on the women as he goes more into the specific topic of women. But I think maybe what he's referring to, because he's trying to imply that they just erased all women from the statistics, and this is how they had their miraculous unemployment numbers. But I think what he's referring to, or what the article is, because it's not sourced as to where they make the claim that they're just erasing statistics to fit their numbers or for propaganda, merely propaganda purposes. But I think what he's referring to is women were encouraged to raise families and to leave the market, as a matter of fact. In fact, they were given a loan in many cases, a non-interest loan, in order to do stuff like that, to build the family, because a part of the philosophy and beliefs of National Socialism was preaching that nuclear family, essentially, where the mother didn't need to work but could raise the children and help mold the children. So that's maybe what he's referring to, as they tried to, because there were so many out of work men that it made sense to try to get these women out a lot of jobs that out of work men could have, to more focus on family. So that was a goal and something they promoted in Nazi Germany, but they didn't just erase numbers here and there. And we'll get into why that's it just doesn't add up to the claims once we look at the employed women. Even though they tried to encourage women to become more homemakers, we'll look at the numbers and see what they say as far as their employment as he goes further into the topic.
Right? So they don't even talk about the women. So 6 million people, now half of them are women, so all of a sudden you're only bringing down unemployment to 3 million. If we change the definition of what unemployment means. Isn't it this amazing? You change one word and all of a sudden the statistic changes. Like overnight, I can do this with my pencil. It's like, give me a country. America, how many unemployed? I don't know, 20 million. I'm pulling this out of my ass. 20 million unemployed in America. Do you want me to see how I reduce the number? Women don't count as unemployed. 10 million. Right? Now, you will say, well, still 3 million people. That's still a big number. But when you take into account the fact that people were now being drafted in the military with record numbers, people that were in the National Labor Service didn't count either, and Jews, other minorities also didn't count, well, all of a sudden the number of unemployed people goes really way down, doesn't it?
So he's trying to give the impression that, and I don't know if he just gets this impression from reading the article or if he believes this for some other reasons, that simply all the Germans did was erase half of the unemployed population from the statistics, and therefore it was false statistics of the job recovery, when this is actually not the case. Despite whatever positions They discouraged women from being a part of, despite whatever Jews were removed from the job market, despite whatever women were removed from specific aspects of the job market. The 6 million unemployed was almost 100% fully recovered by 1938. And so despite whatever, because he's trying to give you he's trying to imply that they just simply erased it. These unemployed people still existed, but they just erased it and fudged the numbers. So they made people believe that this was a job recovery when it really wasn't. When in reality, it was a job recovery. It was so much of a job recovery that they eventually had to use foreign workers as well. It was so much of a job recovery that women were working at a higher percentage in Germany by 1938 than in England or America. And we'll get into that in a little bit as he focuses more on women. So it's once again, it's a half truth. There's a lot of what they do with these things. They'll take a half truth and then they'll spin this web of lies to imply that the most nefarious aspect they can. There was no false representation of a job recovery in Germany. It was a complete job recovery in Germany. And once again, women worked at high rates as well, higher than England and America. So two of the most liberal free places, right? So it's a half truth. They encouraged women to raise families. They wanted to get women out of especially the manual labor job market, but women made up a large part of the agricultural job market. So he's nefariously spinning a web here and acting like they simply removed people. And there was this whole 3 million people still unemployed and destitute for a job, when that was not the case.
Now, the problem with this is that people who constantly say that Germany attacking Poland, and this is what neo-Nazis will say, like Germany attacking Poland, again, they buy into the German propaganda, which is that the people in Poland are butchering German citizens. The reason you need to have a propaganda, a cause belli, if you will, is to justify to the soldier fighting, why is he killing Polish people? Because if you tell him, well, we're going to kill Polish people because we want to take their land, isn't as big of a psychological reason, isn't like turning the wheels in his head, as much as saying, no, you're going to Poland to save the German people.
So that's about as inaccurate as you can get as explaining the whole Poland issue. First, simply looking through works like Hitler's Revolution, What the World Rejected, Hitler's Peace Offers, 1933 to 1940, The Orphans of Versailles, The Germans in Western Poland, and The Warpath. They showed us this common documented theme of first Hitler only wanting back the land taken after World War I, which he said was bunk from the first moment, and which many Germans agreed with. So this is what the dispute was over. And then he acts like there are these exaggerated false claims of Germans being persecuted in Poland. But it's well documented in the book Orphans of Versailles, not written by a Nazi sympathizer. Numerous cases of ill treatment, of land being stolen, of being run out of jobs, of being persecuted, of being even murdered, go on and are documented. And the Germans were pleading for Hitler to come save them, like he did with the Germans in Czechoslovakia, who are also subject to being treated as a hostile minority by the Czechs. So same with the Germans in Danzig and any other Polish occupied areas that were previously German. So that was a real thing. And then Hitler's desire for acquiring the land back through non-physically combative methods is well documented as well. First, it's pointed out in the warpath and Hitler's revolution that there were even points of time where peace was looking like it could become a reality, that Hitler had made sure that the German media did not put stories of German persecution in Polish occupied zones on the front page, that they would bury them in the back of the paper, so as not to get the German people being more hostile towards the Poles. It is also shown that peace could have been achieved if mainly Britain wasn't in the ear of Poland telling them to resist Germany and telling them, don't worry, we got your back. France and Britain got your back. If they try anything, we'll crush them. We'll stop them. And it's also known that even after war broke out, Hitler offered to unconditional peace, just keeping the German lands. And this was rejected, of course. So this image he's painting, oh, they had to make up stuff to make Germans go kill innocent Poles. That's fucking, it's a lie. It's bullshit. The guy is completely pulling bullshit out of midair. It's documented. It's documented. You can't deny it. Well, you can deny it, but you're wrong in denying it. And it's also known, once again, he was pulling stories. Sure, when it looked like things would be hostile, you put those same stories on the front page, right? But when you look like peace is achievable, you put them on the back page, you bury them a little bit. Of course. But it shows you that there was an effort to get their lands back. Pre-World War I German lands. It's not going stealing Poland's land. That's not the original intent. That became the consequence of Poland desiring war because Britain encouraging them and telling them they had their back, which didn't work out too great for Poland. And then he goes on to the Russia Pact. Well, you kind of have to do that. You kind of have to make a deal with the devil when you're in that situation. When you have Western capitalist liberal imperialism over here and you have Stalinism over here, you're going to have to... And the imperialist, the capitalist are more aggressively assaulting your aims. Yeah, it only makes sense to try to nullify one of your enemies. So that's a complete inaccurate portrayal. There were Germans being persecuted. That's without a doubt. And they did desire Hitler to reunify Germany. And that was one of Hitler's messages from day one. So all of this seeking for war, lying to people, making up stories. No, it's not. You got a vast library back there. Add this to the collection. And then, you'll at least have a little more context to this topic.
Meanwhile, they allied themselves with the Soviets. So remember when they say that Stalin is evil and he's going to sweep over Europe? They actually allied with the Soviets in order to attack Poland both at the same time. And some neo-Nazis actually told me, well, this is pragmatism. This is realpolitik. The reality is that while this might be true, and you might say, well, they just allied themselves out of mutual interest, it doesn't justify the fact that after they conquered Poland, instead of parting their own ways, they had a joint military parade where the Nazis and the Soviets marched side by side. So, all of these things show that it didn't really matter what they said, that they were lying. They actually did want to start a war. They actually did want to conquer Poland.
March 31st, news arrived from London that Neville Chamberlain was about to announce in Parliament that in the event of any action which clearly threatened Polish independence and which the Polish government accordingly considered it vital to resist, His Majesty's government would feel themselves bound at once to lend the Polish government all support in their power. They have given the Polish government an assurance to this effect. This was the first of a shower of ill-considered guarantees to be uttered by the British. The effect in Berlin was an immediate lurch towards war. There was numerous communiques sent from Britain to Poland advising they continue to resist any deals with Hitler as far as securing the Danzig, as far as securing parts of Prussia that were taken. So it's, once again, he's painting a false narrative here. There's not this war-hungry, Slav-hating German military just looking for war. They went out of their way to avoid it. And everything shows that. Everything from the numerous peace offers, everything to controlling the messages in the media as far as either escalating or de-escalating stories on atrocities being committed against Germans in Poland. I mean, everything shows he was trying to peacefully get about what he desired to, or what he promised his people he would, which was the reunification of Germany. And just to add on to Britain's ingenuousness of their, duty to defend Poland, they didn't declare war on Russia when Russia attacked Poland. They didn't declare war at all. In fact, they ended up becoming their allies, right? And then letting them get much of Europe under their control. So I mean, that just shows you the hypocrisy. It shows you what their intent was. It shows you why they went out of their way to make sure no peace deals were reached between Poland and Germany. And it was total bullshit, saying, oh, we feel our duty. If Poland's sovereignty is infringed upon by these evil Germans, it's our duty to go in there and protect them. Meanwhile, when Russia does it, it's, oh, don't do that, Russians. That wasn't nice. There is no world war in that sense. So it's clear what the motives were and the incentives were.
Which was an unnecessary attack. It was a non-aggression from Poland that the Germans just wanted to have Poland.
I like how they just simplify everything to a board game. Oh, Hitler wanted Poland, so the whole world tried to make peace with him, but he just wanted Poland, so he just attacked them. It's completely divorced from reality, right? That whole statement. But it's all too common. Most people actually believe this. So that's the scary part.
So another thing that's interesting is large businesses were prospering, small businesses and the middle classes were squeezed out of the market. The government provided aid to farmers, told them what they should grow and how much to grow, and dictated their prices. And they also had this thing called a 4-year plan. The communists had a 5-year plan because they were they wanted to show they're better. It's like, so let's talk about the problem with the 4-year plan. In the National Socialist system, if I'm a farmer, I am going to get a visit from the SS and say, yeah, okay, you're a farmer, but here's the thing. You can keep your farm, but we tell you how much you're allowed to sell, for how much you're allowed to sell, how many people you're allowed to hire, for how much you're allowed to pay them. We're going to tell you the 4-year plan, and you have to keep the 4-year plan, because if you don't keep the 4-year plan, then you're basically a saboteur. You're sabotaging the national economy. So what's the problem with sabotaging the national economy? Because this is actually really interesting. If, let's say, you would have a flood, like after 2 years, well, now the 4-year plan is kind of fucked. You set it back because, you had to keep it. And because of the flood, your crops went down. The state is unable to sell. They can't get the money in order to invest them in factories or whatever the fuck. So you now set back the 4-year plan. Now you're a national economical saboteur. But you'll say, well, a flood is none of your business. It's not your concern. Well, the Germans will say, well, you knew the flood was coming. You should have prevented it. Why didn't you dig a ditch? Why didn't you put some sandbags? You didn't do what was required. And then they would lock you up. And then they would persecute you, right?
All right. I had to step away. I know it all looks the same, but now it is about 10 hours later, and it's at nighttime. So I am turning this into a drunken video response. I was heading home. It's like, oh, damn, I got to finish this video. So I'll get one beer, one big-ass beer, and a little bit of whiskey to go with it. So he said a lot here. There's a lot to digest. First, as far as the average worker, all throughout first we have to understand there are two phases of the economy in Germany. One peacetime economy, one wartime economy. A lot of times what people do is focus on the wartime economy and try to paint the whole picture of the whole German society underneath that wartime economy. That happens quite often, and it's just disingenuous to do so, but it happens all too often. But as far as the average worker goes, from 33 to 38, their taxes didn't raise that much. It was average to a lot of Europe. Germans were always one of the higher tax people, and that didn't change. Their wages also didn't rise that much, but it didn't drop that much either. And once again, many more Germans were working. And then you also had the Joy Through Work program too, which we'll get into in a little bit when he brings it up. But let's talk a little bit about the farming, because he's talking about the RNS, and how that's basically the Reich's nourishing estate. It translates to that they had oversight over the farming industry. Now, it's not as drastic as he paints it, where they tell you exactly who you can hire and what you can do. And he uses examples of the SS coming to your farm and expected. That's bullshit. Stuff like that wasn't going down. The RNS looked over, and they controlled prices. So, as it's stated, and the wages of destruction, the farmers, if you looked at the global market, the individual farmers could have made more money if it was purely capitalistic. For sure. Individually, they could have made more money. But there were times that the RNS had to set certain prices to make sure the food was affordable to the German citizen. And for this reason, the farmers individually did not make as much profit as they could have if they were allowed to set their own prices and go out their own way. So, but it's a double-edged sword, as is pointed out. As Tooze points out, German farmers, in fact, enjoyed a historically unprecedented level of protection, and it's hardly surprising that this came at a price. In return for the exclusion of foreign competition from home markets, peasant smallholders had to accept comprehensive regulation and control. Farming in Germany, as in Europe generally in the 1930s onward, resembled less and less a market-driven industry and more a strange hybrid of private ownership and state planning. So not only since Germany was cutting down on the foreign imports, especially if their foreign imports were coming in with things that could be grown locally, they would shut that down. So there would be no competition as far as that go with foreigners. But also, he uses this horrible example of this flood and, your economy flooded, so, or the land's flooded, you couldn't grow your crops, so you're a traitor, throw you in jail. It's ridiculous. They actually had, and I'm not going to sit and just keep reading paragraphs and pages from this book, but as it explains in this book, they had shortages from 35 to 36 that were very hard to get through because there was a drought, because farming was, they had a great year in 33 and 34, but then it kind of went down for 2 years after that because of the weather. And because there was so much reserved grain that they almost depleted by the time they're able to stock it back up, many of the farms were able to survive simply because of that. So what he's painting, this picture he's painting is completely inaccurate. They weren't holding over every farmer and with a scale and put your food on the scale. If it doesn't equal what it's supposed to equal each month, you're a traitor. This cartoonish image they paint. And matter of fact, because he paints the image of the citizen has no say at all. You just accept what the government shoves down your throat. They're so oppressive. Never mind all the happy Germans that supported it. Never mind all of that, right? That didn't exist. It's all this oppression. It's all this evil oppression, and everyone's afraid. These cartoonish picture these people paint is laughable. So anyways, despite the childish presentation of this person, the reality is that they set prices, the RNS and everything like that, and even to their own detriment at times, because when they did raise prices in 34, there was such a backlash by the citizenry that, and even Tooze criticizes, like, you can't run your agriculture department off of, what the masses will complain about, because then it's going to be a hard time going about things. But that's why they stopped raising the prices, and sure, the individual farmers didn't make as much as they can, and the citizen could afford more now, but they stopped doing the price hikes when they possibly should have done them here and there to help with supply and demand, that because of the backlash from the people, they're already like, hey, this is too much. This is bullshit. So that goes in the face of this idea that, it's this, callous, emotionless, a heartless state over this oppressed people that, if you can't grow enough crop, they're going to destroy you. They're going to kill you because your farmland got flooded out. It's like, no, even during the bad, the national grain was used to help the farmers maintain, because the goal was to keep the farms maintained and surviving, not picking against and attacking people. And so it's a completely inaccurate picture he's painting there. And going through their economy, it's not even like saying everything was perfect. It was great. Sure, there was good aspects of it, and there were bad aspects of it too. There were times where price fixing worked for them. There were times when it worked against them. What you'll get when you look into the Nazi economy was, there is no one single thing you can label it. That it was a series of trials and errors. It was sometimes using state control, sometimes using the private sector. And it is a mixture of both. And it was seeing what worked here and there. And there was times, like I said, it worked, and there was times it didn't. So, but for these people to either say how draconian it was, or how much control there was, it's simply inaccurate. It's simply not. It's not the reality of the situation. It's not what's presented by the historians that looked into it and that sourced it. So it's, maybe if you're reading articles online, maybe then that's the picture they're going to paint for you. But when you really dig into it and look into what the economy was about, you'll see there's a whole lot of everything going on there, and there was no one set factor.
Wasn't like communism, but at the end of the day, if I don't own my farm, if I don't get to plant whatever I want, if I don't get to hire whoever I want, if I don't get to sell wherever I want, and if I don't get to even put how much money I want in my pocket, and I'm also responsible for everything that's happening, am I really the owner of the farm? Is it really that different than communism? Because the difference seems to be for the individual, like you're still the farm owner. But at the end of the day, like, the system is not that different, because in National Socialism, the guy gets to keep the farm, but the state tells him what to do. In communism, they remove the guy who owned the farm previously, but they still put someone else in its place, and the state tells him what to do. So the difference is so tiny and so minuscule that I just don't see the advantage of it. Capitalism is still better. My farm, fuck off.
And that's the mentality with many of these cap cucks, is mine, fuck you, right? That's the mentality. And this is why I'll eventually end up doing, I guess, a book breakdown video on this book, because I keep getting asked this topic of replying to people, especially when they talk about Nazi economics. And really, I don't like doing it, period. It's not... I even hate getting into conversation with people that judge success by economics, right? This is the only thing why I keep getting asked to respond to people mainly talking about economics, is because this is how they grade a civilization. This is how they grade a society. It's simply they'll look at a piece of paper, and if the GDP is there, that's awesome. That's great. That's all that matters. The culture of the people doesn't matter. The traditions of the people doesn't matter. The direction the society is going doesn't matter. Who inhabits the nation doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, like, let's say in America, if the people are being physically replaced and their culture is being decimated and their traditions are ignored and mocked and vilified. None of that matters as long as capitalism is still around, as long as people are still making money, as long as people are still selling shit. Then that is what equates to success in these people's minds. So that whole mentality, I find repulsive. And this is all too common. Once again, these people only look at it. Mine, fuck off, right? It says it right there. My farm, fuck you, right? I'll do what I want with it. So his analogy that he's using to compare the farming underneath Nazism and communism is once again inaccurate, because it is your land. What makes it your land is you get to pass it on to your children. You own it, right? So it is definitely yours. And not in all cases were people told what they can grow, but in some cases people were issued what they needed to grow, what the nation needed, right? Once again, if you're having your food production planned, obviously you're going to know what there needs to be more of or less of. So you do have that reality, but it's not this draconian. It's not like saying, you're going to force someone to grow potatoes on soil that's usually best for growing radish, right? If someone was growing potatoes, they're going to be in an area that's known for growing potatoes. So it's not going to be like they're forcing people to it's my father's dream for me to grow radish, but these evil Nazis are making me grow potatoes. And no, they're not controlling everyone you hired. In fact, the state is also providing people to come out and work your fields. Believe it or not, youth, women and men, girls and boys, working people's farms. So this picture is not accurate. Once again, and I'm not saying everything was perfect and great or right. I do believe the intention and the motivation was a lot purer and better than what exists underneath capitalism, for sure. But I don't think the applications of everything worked out the best either. But once again, it's good to look at the pros and cons of something and try to be as accurate as we can, instead of painting these cartoonish images of what it was when it really wasn't. So he goes into how the Third Reich got rid of trade unions. And this is true. All fascistic governments believe in getting rid of trade unions and setting up a more kind of a corporatist representation of the employers, of the employees, and mediation through the state for all issues. And this is the same kind of thing they wanted to set up in Germany. And he's speaking about hourly increase in work, true. And then he's talking about on average. And then he's talking about the pay wages being frozen, when there were instances of pay wages being frozen, and then there are instances of it not being frozen. So kind of goes both ways. It's not much different than it is today as far as that goes, for at least jobs with the state.
Strength Through Joy movement. This is another one. So the Strength Through Joy movement is basically, they noticed, right, a lot of people were being pissed off. And they wanted to keep the people entertained. They wanted to give them bread and circus. So they created the KDF, and the KDF had to support the Führer and thank him, and to keep everyone happy after abolishing the trade unions. So they would provide cheap cruises, holidays, travel opportunities, building health clubs, organizing coach trips to theater, cinema, skiing, sailing, and sports.
These people will even try to turn Strength Through Joy into a bad thing. I mean, that's incredible when you look at what Strength Through Joy was. Let's read a little bit about the reality of the program of Strength Through Joy. Few Germans could afford to travel prior to Hitler's chancellorship. In 1933, just 18% of employed persons did so. All were people with above-average salaries. The KDF began sponsoring low-cost excursions the following year, partly subsidized by the DAF, that were affordable for lower-income families. Package deals covered the cost of transportation, lodging, meals, and tours. Options included outings to swimming or mountain resorts, health retreats, popular attractions in cities and provinces, hiking and camping trips. In 1934, 2,120,000 people took a short vacation tours. The number grew annually, with over 7 million participating in 1938. These activities were only possible because Hitler, upon founding the Strength Through Joy agency in November 1933, ordered all German businesses and industry to grant sufficient paid time off for employees. Prior to that year, nearly a third of the country's labor force had no union contract and hence worked without vacations. In 1931, just 30% of laborers with wage agreements received 4 to 6 days off per year. I could keep going on. I can keep going on, but I'd be reading you a whole fucking book. You'd be sitting here watching me read a book to you. And, the more of this I ingest, the less you're going to want to listen to me read from a book to you. But the point is what the fuck are these people even talking about? They're even trying to make that a bad thing now. That, once again, this also builds community. Like we're talking about when they're planting everything. You're going on these large group excursions on, whatever, hiking, sailing, taking cruises, etc. With your fellow citizens, with fellow, even lower working class people who used to, as you see, not be able to travel at all. And now they have the opportunity to do so. Not only that, they have the paid time off to do so. But this atrocious state just attacking, once again, they paint this false picture. They act like it was this callous, tyrannical system that hated its own people. It loved its own people. It loved its own people. And the majority of the people loved it. That's another thing these people won't reconcile with. Why did they fight so hard against the whole world? Why did they fight even though they were past the point of defeat? Because they really loved what they were fighting for. They really believed in what they were fighting for. These people have nothing like that in their life outside of chasing a soulless piece of paper that they can, acquire all kind of materials with. It's like, so I don't know. You kind of have to forgive them for not understanding the motivation and the feeling of the people, for them looking back at history and saying, oh my God, it's so horrible. I can't tell them, fuck you. This is my farm. I do what I want. I can't do that. No. Oh, fuck you. I'll sell this for as much as I can get money for it. It's like, because that mentality is not there. It's like they can't comprehend how people actually loved it.
At least once every 2 weeks you get to go to the cinema.
Yeah, because that's what it was. Every 2 weeks you get to go to the cinema. You see how they downplay this and how they make their argument? Accuracy is not what it's about. There's another reason why I'm done with looking into the skeptic community and trying to bait these people into responding so we can get some of their audience to see the other side of the picture, is because it's not about being truly accurate. It's just about winning or being right. And just how dismissive you see the attitude displayed in the video. It's ignorance truly is bliss in this. You have to be truly ignorant to dismiss this program, which you're seeing brought Germans, lower working class Germans who would never have the opportunity to travel and vacation with their family. Like, this is actually creating it for them. And it's something, he said they had to create it because there was so much people being mad. No, it's the first year they're in power, they created it. They wanted to create it. Goebbels' diaries will show you when he's talking about a conversation he had with the Fuhrer about this spa, this massive spa they were creating for the working people. And he's talking about like how good it felt to be able to do things like this. And it's like they try to paint this picture of it's this callous, stupid little thing where it's bread and circuses. It's like, oh, you get to go to the cinema every 2 weeks. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's not true at all. It's not true at all. So this Fraggle Rock sounding motherfucker is completely off base with this. Completely off base. He's trying. He puts everything in this nefarious tone, and this is all too common and frustrating with just the whole history of fascism as is explained by the democratic liberal West. It's always, since you're going to get it in public schools, you're going to get it from these so-called skeptics. I mean, really, what is the difference? What ideology, what ideals can you find in these skeptics outside of what's shown on Fox News? Please tell me, because I haven't seen it. They, to be alternatives to anything, they seem very much in line with what already exists. It's so, I don't get this mentality of just trying to downplay these things. I could add in clips of German workers talking about how fucking cool it was to take a cruise and how like, wow, I never thought I'd be able to take a cruise. There's videos like that on YouTube. Go just look up videos on YouTube of German workers talking about strength through joy. German workers talking about the ability to travel. There's stuff out there for you to see and to see how people actually enjoyed the opportunity, to see how it didn't even, once again, it was created the first year they're in power. It wasn't as, oh my God, everyone's so mad because we took away trade unions. This is how he's trying to present the picture, that they need to figure out something to distract them. This was a part of the belief from day one. It was always about giving to the people, making life better for the people, and also working together. It was trying to do both in the same sphere. So it's completely disingenuous, the way he's portraying this. I don't know if it's because of intentional malice or ignorance, but either way, it's just completely inaccurate, and it is dumbing it down. And they already do that in school. So why is it different? Why watch this motherfucker talk about it when you can go listen to your 6th grade public school teacher say the exact same shit he's saying? Why? Why even, so how is that any different?
The problem with this is that when Germany went into World War II, all of the car manufacturers had to change from building cars into building tanks. And all of the people that paid into the system and they wanted to get their car were given the dick. People don't like getting the dick.
So he's talking about the Volkswagen program and people that paid into it, that after war broke out, they didn't receive their Volkswagen and they got the dick, essentially, because they were in total war and they didn't get their fucking Volkswagen when people were dying on the front. And this is the epitome of the Cap Cuck mentality. This just exposed right in front of you. Oh, we're total war for our civilization, our culture, our blood, and everything. But I didn't get my Volkswagen that I paid money for already. Oh, this sucks. I got the dick. Yeah. You know who else got the dick? A lot of German women from evading Bolshevik scum. So that's who else got it too. But none of that shit matters. I didn't get what I paid for. Oppressive. It's oppressive. How are people not disgusted by this mentality? Is it because socialization and indoctrination has been going on for so long? Like this is a normal mentality to have? To be that disconnected from the reality of it, to complain about when your country, when your people, when your race, when your ethnicity is in total war for their civilization. This guy's going to bring up people that didn't get their Volkswagen because they had to start making tanks to survive. Yeah. You know what? Call me crazy. I don't think too many Germans were complaining about that at that point in time. Don't think so. So I'm going to skip ahead on a lot of his stuff, and we'll get to what he's talking about with women because it's completely LOL. So we'll address that. If there's anything I missed, because this will go on to be a 2-3 hour video if I just go through everything he's saying and then add a little context to the conversation. If there's anything you saw in the video that you have questions about, then you can ask me specifically on those questions and we can discuss those. But as far as that, let's jump ahead. I'm going to skip ahead and get to a little part on women and then try to wrap it up.
And it's the idea that, of course, before the Nazis came, women received a high standard of education, could earn good wages and good jobs, and could vote. After the Nazis came, they weren't allowed to wear makeup because of societal pressures. They weren't permitted to perm their hair. Their jobs were obviously not even considered by the government that women should work. It was like we're not even counting them as unemployed. And they were asked to stay at home to bring up the children, but later on they actually did force them to work when soldiers went to war. So obviously the fathers went to war and the women had to stay home. And it's also interesting that women also had jobs that were well paid, well proficient before 1919, which were, for instance, doctors and so on and so forth. So the state also started promoting having lots of kids. They would give a matrimonial loan of 1,000 Reichsmark when a couple got married, with the condition that the wife had been in a job for 6 months and then would leave that job. And then the husband didn't earn more than 125 Reichsmarks per month. So if the married couple had 4 children, they would give you an award such as, if the couple had at least 4 children, they could keep all the money they had borrowed. So you didn't have to pay back the loan. Best hope that your pussy is going to go on overdrive. Popping kids, pop, 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 so they can...
All right, let's stop it there. We'll just get into what he generally says about women. See how he's such a modern beta male, for sure. Oh, poor women, they have to pop out babies. So yeah, they gave you a loan of 1,000 Reichsmarks, and you got 25% of it knocked off for each child you had. So if you had 4 children, it was completely paid off. And the idea that we look at it today, I cut out a part where he was going on about some American Nazi propaganda back then that was saying like Europe was dying, it was going to be replaced, and etc. And we see that happening today. And we see the birth rate of Germans today. And we see the birth rate of Germans being replaced by migrants in Germany today. And we see the same in America today with American whites and then with non-white birth population. So you see this guy ridiculing the thought of trying to encourage women, German women, to have German babies. You see that. Now, if you understand, as I understand it, as you should understand it, about what the birth rate situation is and what the situation is in the future for Europe, then you should be sickened at what this person's saying. Matter of fact, you should be more than sickened. You should want to smack around a person like that. I mean, I can't think of anything just to ridicule that thought when you, but once again, none of that matters to this person, right? None of this matters to these cap cucks. The only thing that matters is, does capitalism exist? Are people making money? Oh, does it matter what they're buying? Device industry is the number one, product being bought. Oh, who cares? The market has spoken, right? So this is their mentality. I find it repulsive. And I guess that's just the fascist in me. The blood boils. It's frustrating to see people like dismiss that attitude so much, especially when what's going on today. And anyone that's aware of what's going on today with birth rates and with rape and with everything else, you would understand why, like, just anger flows through me every time I see stuff like that, and see people ridicule it, right? Just beta cuck male, right? Who wants his woman probably to be his father and his mother, right? So it's disgusting, but it's all too prevalent in male today. So he's speaking about women. Let's get into some of the stats with women. He said they didn't want them working at all. Of course, they didn't try to encourage home life, right? Of course, they gave incentive for this. But they didn't completely, and there was specific jobs they wanted men in, and they tried to discourage women from taking. But women continued to work throughout the peace years. And he brings up how they, used them for work once the men went to war, once most of the men went to war. Well, that's true. But they were already working. Since they had a pre-war working percentage higher than England, higher than America, they were able to fulfill the jobs that many men were doing when after they went to war much easier and quicker than the British women and the American women that also had to take those roles once war was breaking out for them as well. So I'll read a little bit from this, from Wages of Destruction, and on this topic, but that's it. I don't want to go too much into reading. Okay, in certain areas in Bavaria with dense population of peasant farms, female workforce participation rates already exceeded 60% in 1939. From 1934 to 1937, the number of women in the workforce increased from 4.5 million to 5.7 million. Despite programs to encourage women to return to traditional family roles, the government did not restrict those choosing a career. They were equally eligible for tax incentive offered for starting small businesses. One obvious solution was a further mobilization of German women. This is as war is breaking out. It has become a commonplace to compare the mobilization of Germany's female labor force in World War II unfavorably to that of Britain. This, however, ignores the obvious. As we have seen, German women in 1939 were already more actively engaged in the labor force than Britain's women were to be even by the end of the war. So we see that's, once again, it's a false representation he's presenting of kicking women out of work, not letting women work. It's fucking ridiculous. As far as the makeup and the hair perming, of course that's fucking pure hyperbole. The Reich did try to enhance the idea of natural beauty. And once again, that's what I'm in agreement with. I personally, I don't like when women cake makeup all over their face. I find it completely ugly and fake. So it's, but that's, they had a belief in natural beauty. And they showed that quite often. There was a lot of art with naked bodies and sculptures and so on and so forth. As far as curbing a woman's ambition in any certain direction, if Merit decided, they would be accredited. I mean, Leni Riefenstahl is one perfect example. She's one of the world's first famous known female directors. Then Hannah Reich, also Iron Cross winner, took part in many, many, many tests and acts of bravery and heroism, and once again was awarded the Iron Cross because of that. And let's look at her last words, or at least in her last interview, what she says about her thoughts as a woman who actually lived through the Reich and was an acclaimed pilot, was an Iron Cross winner, or was awarded an Iron Cross, rather. What does she say? She says, in her last interview in the 1970s, "And what have we now in Germany? A country of bankers and car makers. Even our great army has gone soft. Soldiers wear beards and question orders. I am not ashamed to say I believed in National Socialism. I still wear the Iron Cross with diamonds Hitler gave me. But today in Germany, you can't find a single person who voted for Adolf Hitler into power. Many Germans feel guilty about the war, but they don't explain the real guilt we share, that we lost." So that's coming from an acclaimed woman of the Third Reich. Or you can listen to a beta Capcuck male tell you how women were treated so wrong as he white knights his way into continued abstinence. So it's a complete false narrative being presented by this character, just like it's a false narrative presented by Sargon, by Vox Day, by Roaming Millennials, by probably all of these people in this shitty little book merchant community online where I'm so smart, listen to me, you're smarter simply for listening to me, buy my book, by the way, group that you find online. And so that'll be my last response to them. It would be good if any kind of response could be baited, because I'd love to get their audience to check out some of the videos on this channel and bring a few more over, which always happens. So, but it is what it is. I'm going to stop here. This video's gone on way too long. I spent too much of my night doing this. Like I said, I started this in the morning, had to go about my day, then come back and finish my night on this. Already in a bad mood now, just watching it, so I got to kind of get myself out of that mood right now and go on with my night. But that's that. Look, there's plenty of information out there. If you take the time, you can, even if you don't got the time to read it, like, once again, I'll have to make a video on detailing Nazi economy, and I'll use more books than just this. I'll try to put it out. It'll be boring as fuck for me, and it'll be a long-ass video, but obviously it needs to be out there because there's so much misinformation, and I don't want to keep making video replies to people every time someone says, "Hey, look at what this guy's saying. Could you please go make a video reply to him?" Rather just send them to this video, like, look, just watch that. Send anyone to that, and that'll explain it as best can be explained. So that's that. More bullshit, more half-truths, more SOS. Same old shit. Same old shit you'd get on Fox News or MSNBC you get from these skeptics, right? They don't step outside the box on anything, really. They're fake as fuck. They're all effeminate. They all want to argue their way and book merchant their way into victory or whatever the fuck they think victory is. So it's all false. Stop falling for that shit. Might makes right. Lesson of history. Lesson of the present day. Way of the future. That's it. Improve yourself. Physically, mentally, spiritually. Demand more of yourself and you'll demand more of your leaders, so you'll get better leaders and hopefully a better society. Go forward like that. Stop listening to all these intellectual masturbators with their half-truths and their I'm going to read an internet article and pretend I know what I'm talking about fucking mentality they have. It's ridiculous. All right, so that's it. Cheers. Hopefully this is my last video response to this community. We must get on with more stuff. With more book breakdowns and more drunken rants about things I like to rant about.
So once again, if I missed something he spoke about that you wanted to be specifically addressed, that you may have been confused about or not know what was what about, just say it in the comments. Say it in the comments, and then I'll try to address it the best that I can, right? I won't play know-it-all with you, but I'll do it the best that I can, the best of my knowledge. The best of what, my library has shown me, not some fucking Wikipedia article or some news article online, but the best of what I have learned throughout my time of exploring these topics. I'll try to answer it the best that I can. So if I miss anything, let me know. Cheers.